Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti. And as is our practice, we pick up an issue and we dive deep into that. Today, I'm going to specifically focus on the recent Pew research done in India with a specific focus on how the religious differences or religious harmony is playing out in the Indian context. And it is such a deep research. Pew is a very famous entity, has established its credibility in that regard. People take the Pew research findings very, very seriously. And to discuss the outcomes, because it has created quite a flutter, quite some discussion points in many forums where people are making their own interpretation of the findings. Now, how valid are those interpretations? We do not know, but we can definitely see what is in word. What also is important to figure out that when these surveys are done, these research work is done, we never know the true intent of the doing agency. However, we have to see from the words that come out and the findings that are reflected. To discuss this, I have a great privilege in welcoming Dr. Praveen Sinha, who is a professor of accountancy at California State University at Long Beach. Prior to coming to sunny California, about 20 years ago, he was on the East Coast where he did his doctorate from Carnegie Mellon and then held faculty positions at SUNY Buffalo and Cornell University. He's a recognized community leader, and I know him personally because we have connected, conversed, and interacted on many social platforms. And he's very deeply involved, and as a founder of Indian Americans of Irvine and Orange County. You can see the logo right on top of his when you see him, a group of highly engaged citizens. He's actively engaged in the civic and political affairs of the Indian community in Southern California and beyond. So, Dr. Sinha, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Vibhuti ji. Glad to be here, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to go through something which I really enjoy. So thanks.
And thank you very much for saying that, because we did have a conversation, and we do have conversation on several social forums, social media forums. And I see that you are remarkably involved in the things that are happening around Hindu community and Indian diaspora and India in particular, because there is so much of browbeating, so much of incessant attack on things Hindu and things India. That's my thought process. That at the moment, what I'm seeing, and I came to this country in 1991, the amount of animosity, if I may say so, or Hindumesia, if I may say so, that exists against Indian communities or Thing Hindu is just about mind-boggling. And I recall with great pride when one senator once told me that we love you Indians as immigrants to this country. You are professionals, you are hardworking, you have high median income, you take care of your family, you have family values, you take care of your children, you are least problem from a law and order perspective rather than occasional white collar crimes. And you ask for nothing. Is it because suddenly Indians have become vocal and begun to ask that Indian awareness is far more dominant now than ever before? So let's talk about this Pew research. You did significant findings of this research. It's a gigantic report of more than 200 pages. So share your thoughts and feel free, take your time, and let's bring it to the audience and to the people, what it has and what it doesn't have.
Okay. Thank you, Vibhuti ji. Let me start with this. I've been a researcher throughout my life, and I've done research in the area of business. And there are multiple paradigms of research that we engage in. So for instance, there are people who do research in theoretical, analytical, which is mostly mathematical. There are some people who do empirical research, which is with data, and they can do econometric modeling. That is my area. Then there are some people who do research, which is experimental or behavioral. So there are several paradigms of research. They're all well respected. And survey research, which is what Pew has done in this study, falls under empirical research area, which is a very established paradigm, but surveys have been traditionally kept out of the mainstream research. You will not find very credible studies, at least some time back. Now they're becoming more acceptable, which are based on data derived from surveys. So the academic community has been always skeptical of surveys, and for the right reason. The biggest reason for believing surveys too much or trying to make too much out of them is basically the inability of survey results to help you draw inferences about the population. So if you do a survey on 1,000 people and you try to draw inferences about all Indians from that survey, well, it may or may not be true, and the margins of errors are usually quite large. And to be able to draw a representative sample from a very large population is very, very, very difficult. So typically, academic research has stayed away from that. Having said that, uh, in the last 30 years or so, the survey designs have significantly improved. The techniques that companies employ to get a representative sample has significantly enhanced. And Pew is one of those large-scale research companies which is really on the cutting edge. They have got fairly well-trained statisticians and econometricians who work for them, who know the nuances of, collecting data and making sense out of it. Having said that, let's try to talk about this particular study. A couple of key things to keep in mind. This is the largest survey Pew has ever done outside the United States. And this survey is on 30,000, roughly, well, one short, 29,999. I don't
I
know
did
what
not,
happened.
I frankly speaking, I could not figure out why did
What,
they choose 29,999. It almost looked like that some items priced in the US is $19.95.
yeah, I just wonder what happened to the last guy but a lot of times you design a survey, you send people out, some surveys could not be completed, some have to be thrown away, what have you, because of various requirements. So honestly, that's what they came up with. It's the largest survey ever done by Pew outside USA. So that gives you some sense. And one question that came up, so I'll put it in perspective, Vibhuti, is that I presented this survey on Clubhouse for about 3 hours. So I will address some of the questions that have came up on those meetings, which may be worth it. So a lot of people said 30,000. That's a very small. It's a drop in the bucket, not even a drop in the bucket of a country of 1.4 billion or 1.37 billion. So first and foremost, that 1.3 billion is incorrect because this is a survey of Indian adults, which is about 800 million. So it already cuts out a good amount of it. But even with that, 30,000 from a statistical perspective is a very large sample. We can draw inferences from this data, even though it is especially the way Pew conducted the survey. So let me talk a little bit about the survey, because as the saying goes, that if you don't trust the data, you don't trust the results. You have to trust the data. So I'll spend a few minutes on that, if I may, to talk about how this data was collected so that people feel comfortable. It covers every state in India except the state of Sikkim, Manipur, and Union Territories. They could not cover Kashmir also, but they were able to get data on Kashmir through other individuals of Kashmiri descent in a random fashion. There were about 480 Kashmiris that they wanted to have, and they got it eventually. Rural and urban, that is a big concern a lot of people have. 30% of the survey is urban and 70% is rural, which represents the Indian population breakdown. So what they did was they went to 2011 survey that was done by the government of India. From that survey, they derived what is the breakdown across various strata. So for example, religion, how many Hindus are there, how many Muslims, and so on and so forth. How many people are in the villages versus urban areas, what is the education level, and the gender. And when they draw the sample, they made sure that the sample has stratified in such a way that the population proportions are preserved in the sample. Key thing, this is the hardest part, and I think it is the most unsung part of the surveys, about how much effort goes into making sure you're measuring the right way. So Pew has written a whole section on it, and they have explained in a lot of depth how they actually did it. There's one thing I will talk about here in the survey design, which will be important later. One is that they wanted to have all religious representations. But as you know, that's not all religions are very large number in India. For instance, the number of Jainis in India is about 3 million. And Pew understood that if they do a random survey, they will not find any Jaini at all. So they went into what they call a oversampling, probabilistic approach, oversampling, which means areas where they knew there were more Jainis, they oversampled from that area and then gave that area data lesser weight so that the population is properly, adequately represented. Very clever and a very good way of getting the data on Jain population, which is small. So this way they are able to get results on Jain as well. So they wanted to have representation of every religion and they got it.
And for if I will just interject here to let the people know that what Dr. Sinha is talking about is reflected by the numbers that Pew did. Now, I just want to be very clear. We are not promoting the Pew company. We are not promoting or supporting their agenda. We are only sharing with you the findings in our opinion as an individual. So for example, what Dr. Sinha was talking about, that how many they took into account the religious configuration of India and how they did an oversampling. These are words that are used, technical words in the surveys analysis. So there are, to be precise, they say that they have done, they included 22,975 Hindus, 3,336 Muslims, 1,782 Sikhs, 1,011 Christians, 719 Buddhists, and 109 Jains. So this is the extent to which the Pew went to solicit and seek opinions or views from. Dr. Sinha, go ahead. I will keep interjecting just so that from any particular thing we go a little bit more into detail. And for the viewers, we want to go into this report in depth in the given time that we have. Dr. Sinha, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for giving out those numbers. You'll save me some time from discussing a table, so that's good. But it's a very important part that we are not trying to promote. We're simply explaining what they did. Okay, and sometimes this explanation is important because people question the data, and this attempt here is to explain how things are done so that people can better understand the data in front of them instead of questioning it, because sometimes these methodologies are more technical and a lot of people are not able to follow it. So what they did is perfectly acceptable technique and is done, and it simply shows that they were concerned about certain issues. I do want to talk about this oversampling, and I'll talk about that later. But one thing to keep in mind is that they did oversampling of Jain or population in certain areas where there is a concentration of Jainis because they wanted to make sure they are represented in the sample, in the data. This is a very important part because sometimes the events which do not happen in high frequency, they will not be in the survey. And if you really want to measure those events, you have to do some kind of a concentrated sampling to get that effect out. So I will come to that later, but just remember this part on the oversampling of Jain population to make sure that they are represented in the sample. Okay, so they employed an Indian company called RTI International. They did the surveys face-to-face. They did a trial run. After the trial run was done, they made sure that that the results came out. The people were trained properly. So I would say, in my mind, it falls under the gold standard of survey design and survey implementation. So we should not question the data. What we should be questioning is the inferences that are drawn from the data. Okay. Because if the data is no good, there's no point talking about let's finish the meeting, we're done. Yeah, and typically, I've seen surveys which are like that. But this is not one of those. I think I'd like to spend some time and explain why I may differ from the inferences that Pew has drawn. And we will be calling Pew people on Clubhouse on July 26th, and there we'll have face-to-face. So because I will disagree with their inferences and they will have to defend it. So we will see how that goes. But I'm quite comfortable that I do not agree with every inference that they have drawn in the survey. Sure. But this is academic debate, and we will have a discussion on that when the time comes. So, in some sense, what I'm saying is that this is a good survey. So let's try to analyze the data that we get from the survey and then make some sense out of it. So the survey title was basically Pew Survey of Religion in India, Tolerance and Segregation. As Vibhuti ji mentioned, why did they went after doing survey of religion in India? What is the underlying motive? What have you? We will leave that alone. There's a lot of news about that in the media. Maybe that is what drove them to do this survey, but that's what it is. I will say what this survey shows to me in one single line is simply why India is so unique. It answers that question. That India is just a very, very unique country. We should not look at India from the Western lens, especially the US lens. The relationship between religions, how they work with each other, is very different in India than it is in this country. So, having said that, let me talk a little bit about the key findings of the study. Okay.
Sure.
Those of us who are in the US, so Vibhuti, we can interact here a little bit. You can question me a little bit on this. There are 4 findings that I put out here. There are a lot more than that, but I've considered that to be 4 major findings. First and foremost, India is a quilt, it's not a melting pot. In USA, we talk about this concept of melting pot. Everybody comes here and becomes American. There is so-called American identity, which is so unique, so different, exceptionalism, American exceptionalism, that everybody becomes part of that. India is not like that. India is not a country which is 200 or 300 years old. It is thousands of years old. It has survived, or it has met the test of time, which is what I think is a very important. Whenever somebody criticizes India or certain aspect of Hinduism, I ask this question to them. When a civilization has survived the test of time, you need to understand that what you're reading is superficial and basically based on very limited knowledge. You need to understand things more in depth. So this survey does find that the religions, and we see the word tolerance in the USA. In India, the word tolerance is not used. Respect is more used. So in India, the religions are respected, but they coexist despite their differences, and those differences are fully understood. And nobody takes offense over those differences. They come to an agreement that we are not the same. Okay. Second, a big narrative that is going on in the West is that there is a lot of discrimination in India. So vast majority of the minorities in India do not face any discrimination on the basis of religion or caste, what have you. The evidence is not there. So in that sense, this survey dismantles a very widely held belief, at least in the mind of people who have not seen the data or don't understand India, that there's a lot of discrimination. There is literally very vast majority of minorities do not think that there is any discrimination. Third is that Indian Muslims are different. They are unique in some ways, and they have a lot in common with Hindus. That is something you will not find in surveys that you do on Muslims outside India. And some comparison has been made in the survey with Muslims in Pakistan and Muslims in Bangladesh, not to mention the Muslims in countries like Syria or Saudi Arabia, which are more observant than the Muslims in India. So I will talk a little bit about that also. I think this has huge implications for India's future relationship with Muslims and Hindu-Muslim relationship, which is important. And then finally, I would say key finding is that has really busted all the mainstream media narrative that we have been hearing about India. Literally, none of those narratives find any collaborative evidence in this particular survey. So that is very reassuring to me, because whenever, as you started in the beginning, whenever we hear these stories about, this is happening in India and that is happening in India, India is becoming intolerant, this and that, it used to concern me because that is not the kind of India I left. When I was in a city called Lucknow, where I was born and raised before I came here, which has a very large Muslim population. We had a lot of Muslim friends, and I saw a kind of relationship between Hindus and Muslims that was very, very beautiful, to be honest. There was a lot of respect for each other. We celebrated each other's festivals, but we understood we were different. And there was no discussion beyond it. And I think to some extent, this survey shows that. This shows some very powerful results about Hindu Muslims coexisting. Go ahead.
if I yeah, if I may just say ask a couple of things. One of the reasons why people become suspect of surveys and research studies, or vox populi, the
Mhm,
people's opinion, this
mhm,
is on the people's an analysis of people's deep-seated views.
mhm,
You have expressed your own, and we all have our own analysis of things. Like, it is a very simple thing. You talked about the melting pot vis-a-vis the quilt. That it's a very interesting analysis, a very interesting understanding, because when people say we must be on the same page, people forget to make the further discrimination, whether you are reading the first line of the page or the last line of the page or the middle
Right.
of the page. We
Yeah.
can be at different spots,
Yep.
and that will determine the level of understanding. So
Mhm, mhm,
likewise, you are in any part of the quilt, the whole quilt warms you up.
mhm.
It's not only
Very.
one corner, or just because you are on the one corner of the quilt doesn't make you insignificant, because you
Mhm,
are part of the quilt. You are
mhm,
sewn
mhm,
in a particular way. So the reason why people begin to doubt is that the margin of errors being what it is always, like we have seen, America is the leading country where presidents and everybody else goes by what people think. They do
mhm.
everything in the name of the people, right? The
Yeah. Right.
American people, every politician talks about American people, and that sample is 1,000 with a margin of error of 3 to 5, right? So
Mhm,
the element of mistrust comes in any kind of a research. What is important again is that what is the size of the sample, right? Who did you call? Whether you called a particular group of people to gain a particular outcome of that. So there are several issues that come into that. But what I'm very happy about is that this was not done by India or an Indian organization. Not that Indian organizations are not good enough or not honest enough, but we have not, in India, we have not gained that credibility, international credibility about researches, although we know there are a lot of political samplings going on in India for Lok Sabha elections and other elections. So this is a powerful research. And as you rightly said, it has busted the myths. It's probably a shocker to the Western narrative about India.
it
They
is.
will say, oh my God, we thought that India is riven with religious differences and people are killing each other at the drop of a hat, if not drop of a dhoti. So the question is that this is where the myth has been busted to a great extent, that everybody has a mutual coexistence as a philosophy.
Mhm,
Respect
mhm,
is the word,
mhm,
acceptance is the philosophy. So this
mhm,
is where the Indian life has always been, and I have said so on my programs, that the West must replace its ugly word of tolerance with an Indian description of respect and acceptance.
absolutely.
And that's important. So what I notice here in this survey is, and I'm looking at it, I will go into it deeper, I will read more, I will try to read between the lines, because hey, the surveyors are geniuses. You do not know which part of the thing will spring up later on. Oh, we didn't say that.
Mhm, yeah.
So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead and make my
Okay.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me start with a few things. There's a table in the survey which asked, "Are you religious?" And a very large number of Indians, over 90%, said they are religious. Whether they are Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and all that, they're very religious people. To give you a sense, the comparative number in USA is around 50%. Okay.
Wow.
So
Okay.
India is a very different country. There are people are very religious. So I am glad that the first table, which talks about how many are religious,
Hmm.
gives a sense why we are doing this study. If only 50% of the people are religious, then the survey has not much meaning because half the people don't even care. So you're basically dealing with half the population. So this survey applies to at least 90% of the population because 90% people are religious. And so we are dealing with a very large number of Indians, not just fringe element. Okay. So that part is important for us to keep in mind that Indians self confess to be religious, highly religious, and that number is in excess of 90%. I think the survey title is religious tolerance, and I take offense over that, and I'll tell that to few people. The title should be religious uh, respect rather than religious tolerance. So let me talk through three major results, and I will go through them one by one. The first is we talk a lot about religious freedom in the West. So the question was asked, are you free to practice your religion? 91% of the Hindus said yes.
Right.
89% of the Muslims said yes. 89% of the Christians said yes. 82% of the Sikhs, 93% of the Buddhists, and 85% of the Jains said that. Very large numbers, very, very large numbers of people who said there's complete freedom, there is nothing. So this is inconsistent with the stories that you hear that some religious preacher, either on the Hindu side or Muslim side, was beaten up or killed, what have you. These are minor, minor incidences. Now,
I would hear. Yes, it is a minor incident. It's an isolated incident. It's a tragic incident. However, it can't be made into a general policy, which
right,
is what we notice here. That one stray incident happens, one unfortunate incident happens, and the entire Western media jumps on India to talk about as if there is a brutality against a specific religion.
right,
That
right.
myth, that particular storyline will have to go away after this research that
Okay,
people
okay.
are free to practice their faith.
Okay,
Yes.
so let me give you one more very interesting result, which is not in the table. It is dug into those 230 pages. Let me see. My video is getting a little bit out of sync. I don't know what happened here. Let me quickly check that. When the same people were asked this question, do you think others are free to practice their religion?
Yeah.
So Hindus, 91% said they're free to practice their religion. And when asked, do you think others are free to practice the religion? The number was about 12 points lower. Okay, but that's not true for Hindus. Muslims said exactly the same thing. 89% of Muslims said that they are free to practice their religion. Do you think others are? Oh, I don't think so. Others are not. That tells you this is a very powerful finding in the study that I am fine, but I don't think you are fine. Something wrong is happening to you. And this is I call the knowledge of WhatsApp University. That people see these forwards and they see all this, their perception changes, but they don't see anything. I think this is something that you did not discuss too much, but I think this is a very important finding. And in my mind, this simply reflects that the social media is changing the perception when the individual reality has not changed. There's a difference between perception and reality.
That's a very good observation because it also says one more thing. And my immediate response is that while I'm okay practicing my own religion, I'm concerned and worried whether others have similar facility like I have. So it is
No, no,
actually an
no,
expression of concern, perhaps, in my opinion, as well.
no,
And
no. It's
the distortion that is caused on social media, like Rana Ayub will be cursing India for everything that is Hindutva related.
it's not a concern. They believe it's not happening. They believe that
Believe it's
others are
not
not.
right.
So
Right.
I think it is a very powerful finding in the following sense: how our individual things have not changed, but we believe the rest of the world has changed.
Right.
Okay, so I don't see any violence, but there's a lot of violence in the world. Uh, and I think with this sample size, we should understand that this is a significant finding in terms of what it says about the impact of social media. Okay, now there could be a lot of different reasons, but this finding I found to be extremely, extremely powerful. That I'm fine, but I think others are not fine. And that's said by everyone. Hindus say it, Muslims say it, Christians say it, everybody says it. So they all find that country is becoming intolerant, though I have no problem. So that is one interesting. Second was uh, we were talking about the issue: is it important to respect other religions? So vast majority of Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, everybody said it is. That respecting all religions, and again, I want to underline the word respecting, not tolerating.
Right. Right.
Okay?
That's
And I
important.
think that's what makes India very unique.
Yeah.
Survey title should be respecting religions rather than tolerating religions. So it says respecting all religions is important to me being a true Indian or being part of my religious identity. So imagine how much difference Muslims in India are compared to the rest of the world, where there is a lot more rigidity.
Right.
Muslims, 79% of the Muslims say respecting other religions is a very important part of my religious identity. Being a Muslim means you have to respect Hindus. I think that's a very important result that we see here, and this differentiates the Hindus and Muslims and Christians of India vis-a-vis other countries. One thing more important here, which again you have to dig into the tables, is one question was asked of them: do you know about your religion or other religions? Close to 90% of the people, whether you're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jain, Sikh, or Buddhist, they all said that we know about our religion. When asked about do you know other religion, the numbers are very sparse. You know, so Hindus will say we don't know much about Islam, but 20% say we know, others say we don't. Or about Christianity, they'll say 25% or so we know it, others will say we don't. Okay, so I'll give you the exact numbers here. So 92% of the Hindus say they know about Hinduism. 95% of Muslims say they know about Islam. 89% of Christians say they know about Christianity. But when you go ask them whether you know other religions or not, the answer is literally very small, 15, 20, 30, 25% or so is maximum.
Mhm.
However, all other religions do understand Hinduism a lot more than any other religion. So Muslims say, half the Muslims say they understand Hinduism. 66% of the Christians say they understand Hinduism. 62% of the Sikhs, 59% of the Buddhists, and 92% of the Jains do understand Hinduism. Now, this is a very important result. Why is it important? So when other religions say we respect Hinduism or Islam, it's based on knowledge because they know. Hindus respect every other religion even without knowing it. So let me clarify this part. If I'm a Hindu, I don't know anything about other religions, but 90% say I still respect it. Other religions, when they say respect Hinduism, they are saying it because they know a lot about Hinduism. Now, keep in mind that is very normal, right? I mean, like we know a lot about Christianity because we live in this country, and this is primarily a Christian country. So we know a lot about our Christianity because we live in this country. In the same way, Hindu is a majority religion in India, so a lot of people know about it. The reason I say this finding is important because I think it does reflect Sanatan Dharma. The Sanatan Dharma fundamentally is a tolerant religion. It does not teach to be hostile towards other religions. It's a very accepting religion. So it's important that we keep in mind that we, the Hindus, are respecting all other religions, regardless of what it is, without knowing it. Because
I totally agree with you because I'm a Sanatani practitioner myself, and I totally subscribe to the point of view to the extent that I tell people, tell my Christian and Muslim friends, I have absolutely no problem. And actually, I take delight in your belief that your God is the supreme or the only way. Just leave me alone. Don't tell me I'm wrong. I have no
Mhm.
problem in being who you are. That reflects the other part also is that the 50 to 60 percentage of people from other faiths who say they know Hinduism, is it possible that those are the people who are converted to those faiths? And that's
Could
why
be.
that's why their understanding comes from, but the other hardcore ones, they don't.
You're right. We really don't know why they know it. Uh, I gave one theory, you gave another theory. We will never know because the survey never asked that question.
Right.
But
Right.
my theory was that if you live in a country where 80% are Hindu and you see Hindu festivals celebrated all the time, you will know about it. Like the way we know a lot about, Good Friday, we know about Easter, we know about Christmas, because we are living in a country which is predominantly Christian. So as a result of that, we observe that and we learn about it. So these are
But
the three.
talking about knowing, I'll tell you that I remember I have experience of many CEOs coming with me for joint ventures and businesses to India. And there were two occasions in as many years of my life. The CEO, we went there in Christmas time. We got a fabulous deal and opportunity. And they were astounded to see the five-star hotels decked up in Christmas time. And these
Mhm.
guys were baffled. They said, even we don't celebrate with as much joy and gaiety that you guys do. I mean, That's the extent of which India's message is out there, that we celebrate everything. Right or wrong, I do not know. I'm not here to sit and give value judgment. But the
Mhm.
awareness is there back home too, not only here, but other places as well. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So I think we are almost 40 minutes into it. I don't think how much we can go in this survey,
No,
but
no,
we're
go
having a
ahead.
good
They have a
conversation.
few more minutes. We started
Okay. Okay.
exactly at, yeah, so go ahead. We have some time.
Okay. One more survey part was, do the religion groups see themselves as different? And the answer is yes, they do. Very clearly, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and uh, Buddhists, they see themselves quite different from Hinduism. But that's okay. And so do the Hindus. They understand that there are differences, but these differences do not translate into any mutual disrespect. So there is knowledge, but that knowledge does not translate into anything negative because they respect each other, and they talk, and there is a good amount of freedom to do what they want to do. Now, there was an issue that came up about interreligious marriages and conversions and so on and so
I
forth.
was going to come to that in the last segment of our
Yeah.
conversation.
Okay,
Was
so
the
let's talk
conversion.
about that. And I think uh, both Muslims and Hindus are strongly in favor of stopping interreligious marriages. They both value their religion quite well. They want to preserve their religion. So they're strongly opposed to any interreligious marriages. And that opposition is actually stronger among Muslims than Hindus. So, for example, 67% of the Hindus want to stop their women from marrying outside Hinduism. 80% of the Muslims are opposed to it. Regarding stopping the men from marrying outside, the numbers are not that different. 65% of the Hindus and 76% of the Muslims. So both the communities want to have marriages be within their communities. And I don't see any issue with that. Most people are comfortable with that. So this view is not shared by just one or the other. There is no such thing. Okay. The second question that, so yeah, I think so. There is a whole issue of love jihad that has come up, and that was in the clubhouse room. Okay. Because what the study finds, and so I'll go to that part of it, and I think that maybe that will be there's some religious conversions. So people are against marriages outside the religion, but there's also this question of conversion. Is there a conversion taking place or not? So Pew asked the following question in the survey of these 29,999 people. They asked them, what was the religion in which you were raised, and what is your current religion? In the case of Hindus, the 81.6% were raised as Hindu, and 81.7, almost identical number, were currently Hindu. For Muslims, 11.2% were raised Muslim, sorry, and they are currently also Muslim, 11.2. So they found that for vast majority of Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs and Buddhists, their religion in which they were raised is exactly the same that is they are currently practicing. So they concluded that there is no religious conversion going on. But for Christians, the number had increased. 2.3% were raised Christian, and currently 2.6%. So that's about 13% or so increase in the Christians population.
That
Then
is
they
a very important finding. And if I may
so
interrupt you
so
here.
so let me complete this part with you.
Okay, fine.
This is a very important issue. A lot of people on the left took issue with this founding to say that there is no conversion. Then Pew also looked at how many people are entering in the Hindu religion versus how many of them are leaving. Same thing with Islam, Christian, and all that. And the results were very clear. In the case of Hindus, 0.8% were entering, 0.7% were leaving, which means the net result is zero. So
Ghar
some people
wapsi
can,
ho raha hai.
yeah, but some are leaving also, some coming in, the net result is zero. Okay.
That's right.
Same thing with Muslims, no change. But Christian, again, more people are entering than leaving, 0.3% again. So we can say for sure that there is a conversion towards Christianity because that percentage has gone up. Okay, there is no absent part about it. Uh, but let's talk about the love jihad part, and that's where I'll go back to the very first thing that I mentioned to you earlier on oversampling. There are 3 million Jains in this country, in India. To get a good sample of those journeys, Pew had to do oversampling. Okay. Without oversampling, they could not get any data on 110 jans that they got. Okay. In the same way, when love jihad, which is concentrated in certain pockets, which is what the Hindu left will say, and is not more than 3 million a year, if you really want to pick up love jihad, you will have to do oversampling, which Pew did not do. So when it comes to the question of can we say anything about love jihad, the answer is absolutely no. Okay, because Pew did not go out to do oversampling in those regions where the accusations have been made. So that question is not answered by Pew. And if you ask the Pew people, they will say exactly the same thing. So we should not read anything in this survey to say that there is no love jihad. That question is not answered. And that is the right
And
interpretation
that
of the survey.
question was not even asked.
Right, right.
Both
Yeah,
the things. And
yeah.
therefore, this is a good finding because it busts the myth that exists in the Western media and Western politicians who continuously accuse India of being a Hindutva country. Even the research is not commenting or making a distinction between Hinduism, Hindu, and Hindutva. They are
Mhm.
silent on that matter because they are intermingling and confusing the matter on that account. However, what is important is, in my opinion, as I said a few days ago, love may be blind, jihad is not. So there is an intent there for sure. And we have to be aware and careful about the decisions we make. In a recent conversation that I had with somebody who is who's done a significant work in interfaith marriages, he said that if you do not have to convert, if you are not insisting on conversion to one faith or the other, that's love marriage. If you're insisting on converting somebody to your specific faith, that's not love marriage. That is jihad. So, I mean, call it jihad, call it crusade, any which way you like. That's what is important. That's where the respect and acceptance goes away. Why not allow a full identity of its own? So the question is very simple. You have shared brilliant findings of the entire thing. And there were so many other things which I read also. I wanted to talk to you, but then we will talk about some other time because, time is up. But one thing which I wanted to
Can
say,
we just do one thing more, Vibhuti, before we go, because that's also an important topic here?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to finish that in 5 minutes and or no more than that. So uh, just to, you know, just to put a final conclusion on this Pew survey did not study love jihad,
Mm,
and it cannot say anything on love jihad. And to some extent, what some people have said, if the conversions are forced and they're done through abduction, those are serious, serious crimes. And even if those numbers are very, very small, they should be taken into consideration. And the government should take actions to stop it. Because this is basically human rights violation, it's women's rights violation, it's basically, in some sense, even child, uh, you know, violation of children's rights, because a lot of these cases
right,
involve younger kids. So
right.
we will put that aside. Let's not get into that. Second, very controversial thing that came out of this, which again, left and right always run around and say this is what it is saying, is do Muslims want Sharia codes? Okay. So they did ask this question, and I'm going to read the question to you and I'll give you the answer. Percentage of Indian adults who support allowing Muslims to go to their religious courts to solve family disputes such as inheritance or divorce cases. Okay, that
Mhm,
was the simple question that was asked.
mhm.
And the answer came out 74% of the Muslims said we want it. 30% of the Hindus said no, Christians 27% said no, Sikhs 25%, Buddhists 33, and Jains 33 said no, they should not be allowed to do that. So this is coming in the context of uniform civil code. So can we infer from this survey two things? One, do the Muslims in India want Sharia law? And number two, are the Muslims in India against uniform civil code? Okay, because these issues will come up, and a lot of people will use the survey data to say, oh, the survey says this. So let me be very clear about what does the survey is actually saying. The survey is saying that 75, three-fourths of the Muslims want to settle some, non-criminal matters, primarily inheritance and divorce, in a religious court. In UK, we call them Sharia councils. Okay. In simple English, what they are in UK is a non-binding arbitration. So you go and in a very low cost basis, you're able to resolve a conflict between two parties, which is non-binding, and both the parties are free to take it to the court if they don't agree with the arbitration. Okay. Now, that's what this survey is saying. Sharia law is a lot more than inheritance and divorce. Most of us know that. Sharia law is pretty elaborate. It covers literally every topic. Okay. So when they ask the population to answer that question, when the Muslims are saying yes, they are not necessarily endorsing Sharia. They are endorsing a portion which they may believe is a way of resolving a conflict. When I had this room in Clubhouse, a lot of Hindu friends who are around said, this is how conflicts are resolved in small villages and panchayat. That if you have a problem, you go and talk to the sarpanch, he solves it and you're done. If you don't like it, you can always go to the court. So these are basically the findings of the survey. So there are two things we cannot say in this survey. First, do the Muslims favor Sharia law? 75% the answer is no, we cannot say that. We cannot say that. They're simply saying they prefer portion of it. Second, are the Muslims against uniform civil code? The answer is absolutely, we cannot make any such inference because they're not answering that question. It was not even asked. It is
Exactly.
possible for this statement to be true in the presence of uniform civil code.
And that's where Dr. Sinha, this whole question comes up, and that's where my thing is that Pew is smart enough to know what to ask and what not. Pew's own survey of many years, several years ago, in which they had shown the existence of severe extremities in Islam with reference to imposition of Sharia, with reference to imposition that violence is justified, and to fulfill their goals exists. It's Pew's own research. I have heard about it, I have read the reports, and I can say this with confidence. And that's where that mistrust comes into, that when you have a question which is manipulated or not asking the truthful answer, then the fear arises that you give a centimeter and they will take a kilometer. So if you are saying that I will give you only sectional advantage of Sharia, I want to settle only my family and state matters, then what prevents asking for more? His famous David Copperfield, can I have some more? And once you relent from one element of that, then there is no holds barred. You can keep sliding all the day long. And that's where it is important to bear in mind. I wish Pew does a very comprehensive survey on this, because I have not known anywhere, anybody, any Muslim not preferring Sharia over democratic principles. We know that in the US as well, that Muslims want their own thing. So the Sharia Council of Great Britain, there are areas you can't go in Great Britain anymore. I mean, Europe has virtually succumbed to Sharia law, and that's the element of mistrust. So Pew would have done a better service and greater authenticity to its report had they been bold enough and not political enough to ask the question which would have definitely framed the agenda in a better way. So, we are out of time. Thank you very much for being with Dr. Praveen Sinha. You have really articulated the survey remarkably well. It has real high points. And the high point is very simple, that the entire belief that the Western media, Western politicians, and everybody browbeats the Hindu and India into believing that we are some kind of a bizarre people, that we abuse every minority. The reality is, India has always been home to every persecuted religion in the world. So to me, that finding is like rediscovering gold. I'll put it that way to you. Don't believe what I say. Now your Pew says that. It's like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi brought in transcendental meditation. He claimed that it reduces your stress level, cholesterol level, brings you better consciousness and your better health conditions. People accepted in America only because the Department of Health and Human Services did a full investigation on the impact of meditation 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And they found, wow, it is true. Cholesterol levels go down, blood pressure goes down, your every symptom improves, and then your quality of life becomes better. That's the reason why meditation is accepted. So I would put it this way, that I hope this Pew Research, if the Indians use it well, and I hope they do, we must confront the Western media to say, hey, don't talk to me, read the Pew report.
Mhm.
With the questions which are not asked, let's not waste time on that and
Yeah.
move forward from here on. So viewers, thank you for joining. Have a great weekend and have a great week ahead. Dr. Sinha, you too. You are in my hometown, once upon a time hometown in sunny California. So have a great weekend, and we will have you again to discuss this and many more issues you have in mind to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.